Jeff Nichols movie, Ranked. He may not be a household name like Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino, but Jeff Nichols is one of the greatest filmmakers working today. In the modern cinematic ecosystem, it is often that filmmakers with acclaimed independent features are immediately jettisoned to Hollywood to work on franchise films, where they have very little creative control. That hasn't been the case for Nichols, who, since the beginning of his career, has managed to tell small, slice-of-life stories with smaller budgets. Scale isn't of concern to Nichols, because he conveys emotional authenticity with each of his films, while experimenting with different genres. It's refreshing to see such a talented voice reject mainstream sensibilities in favor of projects that feel far more personal. Nichols is clearly an ardent cinephile, and there's a strong influence of classic filmmaking in his work. Nichols often explores a side of Americana that is not always well represented on film, and analyzes how the mythologization of history impacts social development. Despite having only 6 feature films on his resume thus far, Nichols hasn't made a bad film yet. While this may be a result of the time he takes in between projects, it's clear that Nichols is not willing to put out any half-hearted effort that he does not feel entirely passionate about. It's often the case that a director's first feature serves as a proof of concept for their later work, and that is certainly true of Nichols' debut film Shotgun Stories. While not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, Shotgun Stories lacks the emotional complexity and ethereal beauty of Nichols' later work. It follows the escalating rivalry between 2 sets of half-brothers following their father's funeral. Shotgun Stories is a straightforward crime story set in Kansas that does feature some stunningly photorealistic cinematography. That said, Nichols' interest in examining how stories are told didn't begin to emerge until later on in his career. The most important achievement of Shotgun Stories is that it kicked off Nichols' working relationship with Michael Shannon, who has appeared in all of his films thus far. While Shannon had delivered memorable performances in films like Bug and 8 Mile previously, Nichols was the first filmmaker to truly take advantage of his unique abilities as a character actor. Loving is the most important film of Nichols' career thus far, as it tackles a critical court case that changed marital laws and racial dynamics in the United States forever. The film explores the life of the interracial couple Richard, Joel Edgerton, and Mildred Loving, Ruth Naya, who were arrested in Virginia after their marriage was deemed illegal. The Lovings had to take their battle to the Supreme Court, eventually ending the ban on interracial relationships. Nichols identifies the characters' humble nature. Richard and Mildred simply love each other and have no intention of changing the world. Despite the case's significance, Nichols retains the story's intimacy by focusing on the great chemistry between Edgerton and Nega. Edgerton's great work was sadly overlooked, but Nega's performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Loving features solid work from its entire cast, including a rare dramatic turn from the comedian Nick Kroll as the Loving's lawyer. However, there are moments where Loving's importance overshadows the specifics of the story. Nichols begins to rush through historical events in the last hour and packs so much information about the case itself that the characters begin to feel secondary. The pacing grinds to a halt, as anyone familiar with history knows how the case will end. Loving is an admirable portrait of real heroism, but it's ultimately a standard biopic that doesn't have the originality of Nichols' finest works. The notion of a motorcycle-riding outlaw felt truly radical in the mid-20th century, when films like The Wild One and Easy Rider first hit theaters, but now it has become a rather tired archetype of the American West. Thankfully, Nichols' historical drama, The Biker Riders, is a great throwback to classic cinema that revels in the 1960s aesthetics. Loosely based on a non-fiction photo book of the same names, The Biker Riders centers on the renegade Benny, Austin Butler, who joins the Vandals' MC Club in Chicago, run by the enigmatic Johnny, Tom Hardy. Although Benny falls in love with Kathy, Jodie Comer, he struggles to determine his future when the Vandals get involved in a series of crimes related to the local mob. Although it ultimately turns into more of a thriller than anything else, The Biker Riders works best when it focuses on interpersonal character dynamics. Nichols makes the smart decision to frame the film from Kathy's perspective as she talks to a journalist, Mike Feist, about her experiences, giving her control over what aspects of the story are told. Butler is at his most charismatic, and the sensitive bond he has with Hardy shows a more nuanced side of masculinity than what is commonly seen in crime films. The Biker Riders is also beautifully shot and moves along at an ambulatory pace. This only becomes an issue in the second half, when characters played by Norman Reedus, Boyd Holbrook, Bo Knapp, and Happy Anderson don't feel very well developed. The Biker Riders is an entertaining throwback with some truly lovely moments, but it will not stand the test of time like some of Nichols' other films. Take Shelter is Nichols' first foray into supernatural storytelling, and one of his most intimate and relatable stories. Set in modern-day Ohio, the film centers on the caring father Curtis, Shannon, as he begins to fear that a coming storm will threaten his family. Although his wife Samantha, Jessica Chastain, urges him not to be concerned, Curtis can't help but think that he is the only sane resident of his small community. As with many of Nichols' films, Take Shelter addresses the plight that families go through when dealing with dangerous circumstances. Take Shelter is the most unnerving film of Nichols' filmography, as he truly captures the fear that Curtis experiences as he senses coming danger. There are certainly mythological and religious interpretations of the story, but the film remains grounded thanks to one of Shannon's most underrated performances. Some may be bothered by the ambiguous, almost abstract ending, but Take Shelter justifies its bold narrative risks through relentless intellectual curiosity. 2013 was the year of the McConaughey, as actor Matthew McConaughey made a serious comeback after years of appearing in critically derided romantic comedies. While he won an Academy Award for his performance in Dallas Buyers Club and had a memorable role in The Wolf of Wall Street, McConaughey delivered one of the most gripping performances of his career in Mud, one of the most underappreciated films of the 2010s. The coming-of-age drama centers on a mysterious drifter who begins to mentor a young boy, Ty Sheridan, while trying to reunite with his ex-girlfriend, Reese Witherspoon. Mud gets the viewer interested in every character, exposing the flaws and attributes that truly make someone human. Although there are some shocking twists and turns in the story, Nichols never feels the need to make it overly saccharine or subversive. Mud feels very traditional in how it revamps classic American fables, but the specificity that Nichols intertwines within his characters makes it one of his best works to date. Nichols has yet to direct a film based on Marvel or DC characters, but Midnight Special is easily one of the best superhero movies of the 21st century. It centers on young Alton, Jaden Martell, who possesses extraordinary powers of telekinesis, foresight, and durability that attract the attention of religious extremists. After an obsessive government agent, Adam Driver, begins to track his location, Alton goes on the run with his father, Shannon. It's a sprawling road trip adventure in which Nichols truly focuses on the intimate father-son relationship. Midnight Special fleshes out its mythology without ever feeling expositional. There are rules to how superpowers work in this universe, but Nichols never feels the need to over-explain moments that are best kept ambiguous. Restraint is clearly an asset, as the jaw-dropping final sequence would not be nearly as impactful if it hadn't followed a period of slower scenes. With nods to Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the daring and terrific Midnight Special is a gorgeous science fiction adventure that has all the makings of a future cult classic.